How a pregnant widow turned a broken wagon into a winter shelter. Snow fell without mercy, thick and silent, burying the trail as if it had never existed. The sky and the earth blended into one pale, endless white. In the middle of that frozen emptiness stood a broken wagon, its wooden ribs exposed, its wheels half buried in ice. For most travelers, it would have been a symbol of failure. For Mary Caldwell, it was the last chance at survival. Mary was a widow, and heavy with child. Her husband, Thomas, had died weeks earlier during a hunting trip gone wrong, lost to the mountains and the storm. There had been no grave, no farewell, only the sudden weight of being alone in a land that showed no mercy to the weak. Yet grief had little room to breathe. Inside her grew a life that depended entirely on her will to endure. When the wagon train decided to push forward before the storm worsened, Mary was left behind with an elderly man, a frail woman, and 2 small children. Their supplies were thin, their strength thinner. The wind howled like a warning, promising death before nightfall. "We won't survive out there," someone whispered, glancing toward the frozen forest. Mary tightened the wool shawl around her shoulders and stared at the broken wagon. Its canvas roof sagged, torn and stiff with ice, but the wooden frame still stood. "Then we don't go out there," she said quietly. "We stay. We make this our shelter." They looked at her in disbelief. She was tired, pregnant, grieving, yet her voice carried certainty. The first battle was against the wind. Mary gathered torn blankets, old sacks, spare clothing, anything that could block the gaps in the wagon's walls. She stuffed the cracks with fabric and packed snow along the outside to seal the seams. Her fingers burned, then went numb, but she kept working. Every breath came out in clouds of frost. That night, the storm struck with full force. The wagon shook as if it might collapse. The children cried in fear. Mary braced herself against one of the wheels, one hand gripping the frozen wood, the other resting protectively on her swollen belly. Pain surged through her back, sharp and frightening. "Not yet," she whispered to the child inside her. "Just hold on a little longer." Morning brought deeper snow and bitter cold, but the wagon still stood. The elderly man was growing weak. The woman coughed violently, her lips pale. Mary knew they needed warmth. Or they would lose someone. She pulled apart one of the wagon's damaged wheels and used the wood to build a small fire pit inside, carefully venting smoke through a tear in the canvas. The flame was small, fragile, but it was life. One by one, the others gathered close, hands stretched toward the heat. Days passed slowly, measured by hunger and fear. Mary melted snow for water, rationed the last of the flour, and baked hard, thin bread over the fire. At night, she told stories. About spring fields, warm kitchens, and a man named Thomas who once laughed easily and dreamed of a better life. The children listened with wide eyes, and for a moment, the storm felt farther away. Then, one night, the pain returned, stronger, undeniable. Mary knew what it meant. There would be no doctor. No clean bed. Only the broken wagon and the people she had kept alive. The older woman stayed by her side, holding her hand as the wind screamed outside. Mary bit down on her shawl to keep from crying out. Every breath burned. Every moment felt endless. And then, life. A baby's cry cut through the storm, small but fierce. A boy. Alive. Mary held him against her chest, tears freezing on her cheeks. Outside, the storm finally began to quiet, as if it, too, had been defeated. At dawn, the sound of hoofbeats echoed through the snow. The wagon train had returned, searching for those they had left behind. When they saw smoke rising from the broken wagon, disbelief turned to awe. Inside, they found survivors. And at the center of them all sat Mary Caldwell, exhausted but unbroken, cradling a newborn child. That broken wagon, once abandoned, had become a fortress against winter. And Mary, a grieving widow with nothing left but courage, had turned it into a place where life refused to surrender. Sometimes, survival is not about strength of body, but strength of will. And sometimes, even the most shattered shelter can become home, when guarded by hope.